Welcome to week 3, where we're discussing two ways of justification: evidence and argument. Remember from our video last week that knowledge requires 3 elements: truth, belief, and justification. This week we're going to take a deeper dive into the ways that we justify our beliefs. One of my very best friends, let's call him Bob, recently told me of a time his mind was changed about something. You may have heard of StrengthsFinders, which was developed by Gallup. It is an assessment that helps people discover the things they naturally do best. And since their sample size was nearly 300,000 people, the statistical reliability of this assessment is unprecedented. Bob, who is suspicious of statistics, remained unimpressed. He refused to take the assessment, even when everyone at his job was taking the test. Everyone at work told him the test was extremely good at describing their individual strengths, but he remained unmoved. But here's the thing. Bob has a friend. We'll name him Jim. And Bob thinks Jim is a smart guy. If Jim recommends a book, Bob will almost always read it. If Jim suggests he try a new restaurant, Bob will make sure to go there. And Jim took StrengthsFinders, and he found it extremely good at describing his own strengths. So Jim told Bob, "I will purchase the book for you because I want you to try this assessment and see for yourself." Bob already knew the statistics information. He already knew that all of his colleagues had taken the assessment. But with all of that information, it was Jim's insistence that he try the assessment that convinced Bob to try. Sure enough, when he took the assessment, he found that the test described his natural gifts with surprising accuracy. If you think that this is a story about how Bob fails to make rational decisions, you're going to miss my point. In fact, Bob made a very rational choice. We've all been fooled by statistics, and your mother already warned you not to jump off a cliff just because all your friends are doing it. Bob has a long track record of unimpeachable trust with Jim. Jim knows what Bob likes, and every time Jim tells Bob he'll find a book or a movie or a restaurant to his liking, Jim turns out to be correct. So Bob made a rational decision to rely upon Jim's testimony in this case as well. There are 2 major categories that can provide justification for knowledge. One of these categories is evidence. Evidence is a collection of facts that support a belief. For example, if I told you that I saw a cow, or a tiger, or a panda, or a purple donkey at the mall, you might have a hard time believing me. But here is the evidence. Even if it seems incredible to describe these animals at the mall, when you see the evidence and the context and data within that bit of evidence, the photograph provides a means for understanding the claim in a credible way. Evidence can be seen in several forms. It could be in statistical form, in direct observation, in photographs, or even in our own experiences. Remember my cousin Ralph who's done too many mushrooms? One of the reasons I know Ralph is wrong about the Earth being flat is I've been in airplanes where we were so high I could see the curvature of the Earth for myself. Until then, I had to rely upon evidence that others testified to, but now I've seen it with my own eyes. And this is an important point about evidence. I don't always see the evidence for myself. Sometimes I rely upon the testimony of others. I don't have the necessary beakers, Bunsen burners, thermometers, and whatever else is required to accurately describe the chemical makeup of table salt. Also, I don't know how to use those things, and it's probably a good idea to keep me away from things like open flames. But if I want to know the chemical makeup of table salt, I could find a reliable source that either A, saw the evidence, or B, can guide me to the people who saw the evidence. There are lots of ways in which we will rely upon the testimony of others' observations of evidence, even if we are not able to observe the evidence for ourselves. Airplanes are able to get lift through a physical process of fluid exchange called the Bernoulli effect. Specifically, when air flows over and under the wing, both streams will arrive at the back of the wing at the same time. If the top of the wing, however, is a greater distance, then the air will increase in speed to reach the back edge at the same time as the air crossing under the shorter distance. And because the air on top of the wing is moving faster, it creates a decrease in pressure, resulting in lift. But most of us just get on the plane without much concern for Bernoulli or his effects. Other nerds can worry about how fluid dynamics create lift. I'll just take their word for it and head to Hawaii. Arguments are different from evidence in that they are not observable. They exist in logic rather than observable data. Ruggiero describes these as the line of reasoning that supports a judgment. For example, I once witnessed two kids about 7 years old discussing whether Santa is real. Jeffrey, a particularly smart kid, reasoned that there could not be a Santa Claus because Santa comes down a chimney, and I looked in our chimney and it's too small and Santa is fat. He didn't see Santa try to get down the chimney, but if Santa is fat and the chimney is narrow, Santa can't be the one bringing him presents. Charles, the kid who was arguing that there was a Santa, found this argument cogent, logical, and sound. So he punched Jeffrey in the nose, which I guess is evidence that violence is the only respite for the outwitted. So we may rely upon evidence or testimony to evidence to justify beliefs, or we may decide that a logical argument will best serve as justification. In either case, we may also find that there are often competing points of data and logic. In the discussion this week, you'll find that you take a position based upon some facts or arguments, and others will take a different position based upon a different set of facts or arguments. As you engage in the Here I Stand selfie video, see if you can think through the means by which you justify your belief. Are you using evidence or argument to provide support for your belief? Have a great week.